My fiancé has ghosted me since he found out about my past. This happened a week ago, and I have not heard from him since. I have tried texting him, calling him, going to his apartment, and visiting his sister's house. I can't find him, and everyone is telling me they haven't heard from him either. Everyone except his brother, who obviously did not get the memo like everyone else did to lie to me. He actually told me that Greg, not his real name, doesn't want to see or speak to me. A brief rundown on how we got here. We met 3 years ago at a church function. I have had a very rough life when it comes to men, so I really don't engage any of them in conversation other than just briefly if I can help it. However, I was listening to Greg speak to a group of people about a book that I had just read, so I stood there and listened to him. After he was done talking, the group kind of hung around a little, and I asked him questions about the book. He answered every single one, and the more he talked, the more I was attracted to him. Now, this may not sound like much, but it was the first time I was actually attracted to a guy since high school. As I said, rough experience, but suffice it to say, after I left high school, I got involved with a very bad crowd. I turned to drugs, and when my family finally had all they could take out of me when I was 19, they kicked me out. I don't blame them for this, by the way, because I stole from them to feed my drug addiction. They tried many times to help me, but when I stole a very large sum of money from them and spent it on heroin, they had enough. Living friend house to friend house, couch surfing for about 6 weeks but still a junkie, I got caught stealing from them as well. I was homeless for 2 weeks, honestly lived on a park bench for a couple of days. I decided to start stripping and everything that goes along with it. In other words, I was doing private parties, private dances, and yes, it quickly turned into just being paid for intimacy. I honestly don't even remember a lot of that time because whenever I wasn't working, I was either high or working to get high. I did this for a few years. On my 23rd birthday, I overdosed. I had OD'd several times, but not to the point of not breathing, and I stopped breathing. The paramedics honestly saved my life because they did CPR on me and brought me around. I was in the ICU for 3 days on a ventilator, and I had several IVs. While I was in the ICU, a preacher came by to see me. He was just a minister who goes and visits with families and patients. He came to me and spoke to me about how life has a higher purpose. He said a whole lot more, but I won't bore you with it. Needless to say, whether it was him, me being fed up with my life, or God, I don't know, but it really moved me. When I got out of ICU, I asked them to help me get off of all of the drugs. It worked. I have been clean since the day I left, and I have never had a single desire to go back to that. It wasn't easy at first, but every day got better. I got a job, I reconnected with my family, and then I met Greg. I had never been in love, not even in high school. But after going on just a few dates, I was head over heels for him. On our 1-year anniversary, he asked me to marry him, but with the idea that it would be a year till the wedding. I happily agreed, and it has been the best time of my life. I felt the warmth every single day of his love. But then my mom and dad and I were making wedding plans. They wanted to pay even though I told them not to. And one day while we were talking, they asked what Greg knew about my past. They were meaning, did he know about the drugs? My mom and dad don't fully know how far I sunk. The drugs were bad enough. My mom said that if Greg never asked, then I really should just keep it to myself, that I was a different person, and what was in the past should just stay in the past. My dad, however, said something that actually made sense at the time. I kind of regret listening to him now, though. He said that even though I had changed, who I was still a part of who I am, and hiding the past really is like lying. If Greg loved me, then he wouldn't care about the past. But if he ever found out on his own or some other way, then he might not be so forgiving because he might consider it a lie. So last weekend, I got all of the courage I could muster and decided to tell him everything. He knows things my parents don't know, and now I feel very much betrayed. At first, he thought I was joking, but when I assured him I was not, he kind of got quiet, and then he told me that he appreciated the honesty, he didn't know how he felt, and that he needed time to think. That has been a week now. I let him go Saturday through Saturday, with only texting him a couple of times, just letting him know that I still loved him, and making sure he was okay, and if he had any questions to ask me. Well, he never responded, and it has been a week since I've heard from him. I don't know what to do. He has been my rock since we got together. Times I've been down, he has picked me up. When I've been sad, he has made me laugh. I truly hope I have not hurt him. I think that would be the worst thing of all. I know my past life was disgusting, but it's been 6 years since I've been completely out of that life. I was in another city, actually even in another state, so there is no way that past life can come back to see me here. I made no friendships or relationships during that time, so there is nobody going to seek me out. Can anyone please tell me what I can do or say that will help with him? I really love him with all of my heart and will do anything to make this right. Now for the update. We are taking about a 30-minute emotional break. I asked for it, and he said he needed it as well. We have been at my place all afternoon talking. I'm not going to lie, it has been rough. I've cried more today than I've ever cried in my life. But we are talking, and as of now, we are still together, just no longer engaged, at his request. By the way, all of the crying has not been sad cries. He has also been very open with his past, and it touched me that he felt compelled to be this open when he didn't have to. The post begins. The title of the post was really inaccurate on my part, because he did get in touch with me, and we met for several hours on Sunday. So he didn't ghost me. He never intended to ghost me, and his family did not lie for him. In fact, before we had time to talk at church, his brother came to me and apologized for the way he handled my phone call. He said he clearly did not understand his brother's wish to be alone, to think, and on his own, interpreted that to mean he didn't want to talk to me. The rest of his family had no idea there was any significant problem and did not know where he was because he went away for the week and told them to only contact him for any emergencies. Obviously, they knew something was up but had no idea. So the ghosting part was a combination of miscommunication and, well, honestly just anxiety and impatience on my part. We both apologized over that and moved on. Anyway, we met at church for morning service. I got there first and went and sat in our usual spot. He got there just as the service was starting, but he came over and sat down beside me, and we shared a quick smile as the service started. I was dying inside. After the service was over, people were shaking hands and talking. This is when his brother came to me to apologize, and while we were talking, he slipped away and talked to a few other people. I have a feeling this was planned, but whatever. He came back over and asked how I was, and I almost lost it, but I held it together and said I was okay, but obviously, I was tearing up as we were talking. He asked if I wanted to talk now or later, and I just wanted to get it over with, because if he was going to break up with me, I just wanted it to be done and over with, so I could go home and start the grieving. So I just said I'm ready. He said he really wanted to talk somewhere private and asked where I would prefer to go, and all I could think of was my place, so I didn't have to drive when it was all over with. He followed me home and he came inside and said that he really wanted this to be civil, not a good sign. By this time, I was already a bundle of nerves, so I just blurted out, "Are you going to leave me?" Obviously, I'm crying as I say this. What he said next left me with a lot of hope because I really thought this was a done deal. He said that a lot of what happens going forward would depend on what I said that day with him and how much I wanted to tolerate from him. That last part really confused me, but I just was so relieved that he didn't say yes that I basically collapsed into my chair and told him that I was ready to do whatever it took. He then said that if that was the case, then he would ask for two things from me, and that was honesty and patience. He started off apologizing to me for not being a better man. Well, that was all I could take. When he said that, the floodgates came open. Here was this wonderful man who I basically lied to and dropped probably what I can only imagine from a man's point of view being one of the worst things you could ever tell a future spouse. And he was apologizing to me. I had to hug him and tell him not to apologize to me. He held me as I cried for a few minutes, but then I tried to gather myself to listen to him. He went on to say that he had a horrible week. He said he had to come face to face with a lot of his own insecurities, jealousies, and prejudices. He also said that he learned something about himself, and he did not like what he learned. He said up until I told him my story that he did not realize that he was very possessive and had a jealous streak. He talked a lot about it, but I'll skip that because it was really personal, and well, this is already going to be the length of a book. He then asked me if I was willing to put up with him having some very probing questions and some very personal comments about them. Again, I said I was going to do whatever it took. So he asked the following questions. 1. Did I use protection every time? 2. Did I have any interaction with anyone sexually in the city we live in now? 3. Did I have any idea how many people I had intimacy with? 4. Have I been tested for any sexually transmitted diseases? And if so, when was the last time, and did I keep records of it? 5. Am I willing to be tested again and even again in the future? 6. Did I ever have intimacy with anyone without them being a customer? 7. What types of drugs did I take? 8. When was the last time I took drugs? 9. Do I feel any need or desire to take drugs or any other substance since this incident occurred? 10. How can I guarantee to him that I won't in the future turn back to drugs? 11. Does intimacy have any real meaning for me, and do I enjoy it, or is it just something I do now to be close to him? 12. How much money did I steal? Did I pay back the money? 14. Have I ever stolen any money or anything else without it being for drugs? 15. How can I guarantee him that I won't steal from him in the future? This took several hours to answer because I had to often stop to compose myself, but I answered every one of his questions as honestly as I could. He often told me that I didn't have to answer them if I didn't want to and kept apologizing for asking, but he said that to go forward with anything, he knew that he had to know or he just wouldn't be able to. He then listed out his concerns and asked if I really wanted to work with him on them, and he would understand if I didn't want to. I said I wouldn't be here if I didn't want this. So his concerns were as follows. A. He is afraid that if times get rough in the future, for whatever reason, I might steal from him or his family. Honestly, I was surprised by this, as this was not something I thought would be an issue, but it was the first thing he talked about. Now, to be fair, his family owns a business. They are not rich, but they are not poor either, so I guess he's worried when he takes over, I might steal. B. In his words, he has an irrational fear that once a junkie, always a junkie, and he said he doesn't know how strong he is, and it would unalive him if we stayed together and I sunk back into that world. See, his fear that intimacy would be an issue going forward. He said that he has had horrible, intrusive thoughts all week. The fact that I have been with so many people and done so many different things that nothing would ever be special. And ultimately, he was afraid he would become bitter because he would feel like we were just having intimacy for him. And that knowing that I would just be participating would really make his desire to have intimacy with me drop significantly. Again, I listened to him and answered every concern to what I could. He said he knew a lot of this was nothing I could ever really guarantee, but he just had to talk about it. I told him that I understood, and I had already suspected some of this would come up. As I said, we spent several hours going over this stuff. We had to take a couple of breaks, so that way our emotions would not get the better of us. He really went through the range of emotions himself, but I knew I had to let him if I wanted this to work. He told me he was willing to stay and try to make this work because he really loved me. Obviously, my heart leaped at this, and I cried again. But he said that he did not feel like we could go through with the wedding as scheduled, and that, in all honesty, he would like to end our engagement and stay dating, exclusive, of course, for a while. He said he wanted to take the time to look at this from a new perspective. I took off my ring to give it to him, and for the first time, he broke down and cried. He told me to put it back on and that he just wants to postpone the wedding, not end the engagement. I told him we could do whatever he thought we had to do. He said, "We are just going to tell people we are going to postpone the date due to scheduling conflicts, and we would let them know a new date. Then we had to decide what we were going to be telling family." He said from his side of the family that he is going to tell them that he was feeling pressured at work and that he got upset over a misunderstanding about time away. I told him that I would say whatever he wanted. He said it was best to not tell anyone else about my past, except for our minister, who we are going to start going to couples counseling with. We both agreed to this. As to my family, well, this is where the one problem we had that day came up. He just assumed my family knew. I told him they only know about the drugs and stealing. He said that he thought my parents should know because they are paying for the wedding, and it will cause some problems, canceling events and stuff, and he did not want them to think this was just because I used drugs years ago. It wasn't a deal breaker for him, he said, but it was something he felt was right, but would abide by whatever I thought was best. I really do not want to tell my parents. What I did was bad enough, stealing and doing drugs, but if they knew I stripped and prostituted myself, I don't think I could ever look them in the eye again, and they have been so wonderful to me since I've come back. So, in conclusion, this ended better than I ever dreamed possible. Yes, I know he has a diminished view of me. He really was upset that I waited so long to tell him, but I had to know that this was inevitable, and he said once he gets over the initial shock, he will try his best to never bring it up again. He truly is a wonderful man, and I am so very lucky that God put him in my life. First off, things have been great between us. I mean, there have been issues, but nothing that I didn't expect, nor anything that I can't handle. I still am happy that he is in my life. When last I left off, he had asked me to tell my parents because he was afraid that they would think he was being overly critical of a previous drug habit. But he also told me that he wouldn't make that a deal breaker. He just thought it would be a good idea. Well, after thinking about it more, I just felt like I did not want to have to tell my parents that part of my life. I believed with all of my heart that they would have supported me, but I just did not want to go through all of the emotions of telling them. I explained it to him, and he was fine with it. He said that he respected my thoughts on it and would never say a word to them. I decided on my own to tell them that we were postponing the wedding. I told them that after we had talked, he wanted to stay together and that he just wanted more time to think about things. I thought that this was best, as I didn't want him to be there to have to explain anything, because if something would have come up, I did not want him to feel trapped. I told them they were disappointed, obviously, but they understood. He had given me money to give them to pay back their deposits, but they said that they did not want it and for us to keep the money. I thought that was the end of it. Was I ever wrong? He came over for Thanksgiving dinner. He had lunch with his family. I was invited but could not attend due to not getting off till late from work and then having to help my mom make dinner here. He got to my parents' house around 4 or so, and we ate dinner at 5:30. My parents, both sets of grandparents, and several cousins were there. Dinner went fine. We ate, and everybody was having a good time until my cousin, who is several years younger than me, 12, asked when we were getting married. There was a long, it seemed forever, awkward silence, and he just sat there looking at me for guidance. He spoke up and said, "Probably next summer," to which my mother's mother heard this, and obviously nobody had told them that the date was off. Well, she proceeded to ask if she had the dates wrong in her calendar, to which my mom quickly jumped in to just say that there were scheduling conflicts. Well, that should have been it. But instead of accepting that, my grandmother starts to ask what scheduling conflicts. If it was the church or minister, she was going to get this straightened out. This went on for a good half hour, and I could just tell by the look on his face he was sick of it. He never said a word, but he looked almost very upset. Finally, my family starts to leave at about 8:30 or so, and after everybody says their goodbyes, he and I go back to the living room and sit on the couch. I apologize profusely to him, and he says he's fine, but I can tell he is not really fine, but he is starting to be less tense. My parents come back in from the front porch after telling their parents goodbye, and they sit down, and my dad apologized to both of us, saying that our family means well, but sometimes can be overbearing. The three of us laugh, but I notice my mom not laughing. My mom proceeds to take a bad situation that was under control and actually ending and decides to dump buckets of gasoline on it. She said that she felt bad for her mom because she thought she was upset because my grandfather, my mom's dad, is having health issues, and they were afraid that he wouldn't live to see my wedding. Here is where it goes to hell. She said it was silly to postpone things over a drug addiction that hasn't been a problem for several years. My boyfriend just sat there, but I could physically both see and feel him tense up. I was holding his hand. My dad spoke up, and he and my mom started arguing over it, and by what they were saying to each other, I could tell they had talked about this after I told them. No surprise, really. And I could tell that even though my dad was trying to be polite and make my mom shut up, that he pretty much felt the same way. I just could not take it anymore. I felt absolutely horrible for Greg. He not only had to sit there for my grandparents, he now was having to sit there for my parents, and everybody is blaming him for all of this. It wasn't fair to him. I spoke up and told my parents that I had to talk to them and that they needed to stop arguing and stop blaming Greg for any of this. He squeezed my hand, indicating to me that I should stop. I looked at him, and he shook his head, no. I told him that no, this was not fair to him, and ultimately, it wasn't fair to them either, because they were blaming him for the wrong reasons. Obviously, this got their attention. I went ahead and told them that after they had kicked me out of the house, I had no home, no job, no education, no skills, no nothing. I only told them that I became an exotic dancer. I just could not bring myself to tell them more. But they are not dumb. My mom immediately gasped and started to cry. My dad just sat there dumbfounded and tried to calm my mom down. My mom, after being basically hysterical for a few minutes, apologized to Greg. She said she had no idea and that he was a wonderful man for staying with me even knowing that. Not too sure how I feel about that statement, but I guess in the end, she was coming from a good place. But the main thing was that it did take the blame off of him. My dad welcomed him to the family by saying this was just a typical Thanksgiving, trying to be funny. I asked Greg if he would mind if I talked with my parents and I would see him on Friday. I walked him out and we kissed goodnight. I told him how wonderful I thought he was, and he told me that I didn't need to tell them that he wasn't going to say anything. I said I knew he wouldn't, but it was just going to never get better with them unless they knew the truth. I went back in and spent the next several hours talking with my parents. Needless to say, it was heartbreaking on several levels. My dad openly cried, and I have never seen that. He blames himself for this. He said that he never should have kicked me out, that he ruined my life. No matter what I said or did, I could not console him. My mom tried as well, but nothing was working. We all went to bed, and I was woke up by my mom panicking, calling 911. My dad was having chest pain. The ambulance came and said he was having a heart attack and took him to a hospital that specializes in heart problems. My dad looked horrible, and I was scared more than I ever have been. I called Greg, and he came and picked my mom and me up and drove us to the hospital. They would not let us back to see him as they rushed him into surgery, and the doctor came out telling us that the ambulance most likely saved his life by recognizing what was happening, and that a surgeon was with him, putting in stents, and had basically already used like a plunger or something to get rid of a blood clot they found. We called our minister, and he was there within a half an hour. My dad is scheduled to come home tomorrow. He looked great tonight and said he felt perfectly fine. Greg has been a rock for both me and my mom. When he left to go get us food, My mom actually told me that I need to make sure to keep him because the only man she knew that was any better was my dad. I am just grateful that my dad is going to be okay. Greg said tonight when he dropped me off at home that life is never dull with me. We both laughed. I have to try and help my dad realize that what he did was tough love and that he can't blame himself for my poor choices. He didn't just kick me out after the first, second, or even 23rd time. They tried for a couple of years to reach me, but I wasn't having it. I spoke with my minister about therapy for my dad, and he said that he will speak to him as his minister and recommend another therapist if my dad is open to it. Hopefully, this should put an end to any updates. I know that Greg is the love of my life, and I am doing anything in my power to make sure he knows how much he means to me and how I will never betray his trust in me. Am I the idiot for confronting my husband about his Tinder profile while pregnant? I, female 29, and my husband, male 38, are expecting our first baby, and I am 30 weeks pregnant. My coworker, who is also a good friend, approached me at work asking, "Does your husband have a brother that looks just like him?" I said, "Yeah, he does. Why?" Then she asked, "Is his name John?" To which I replied, "No, it's not actually." Then she explained that she was scrolling Tinder and came across this profile that looks just like my husband. She showed me the screenshots, and I was so shocked to see that my husband is currently on Tinder and using a fake name of John. Now, some backstory. We actually met on Tinder, and he used the same photos for this profile as he did when I came across his profile, and also the same biography. We met 8 years ago. I was out of town working, about 100 miles. My friend has her Tinder set to the farthest distance radius possible. When I found out this information, my theory now is he must use Tinder to try and hook up with women while I'm away, as I go out of town for work for a couple of days on a regular basis. Either that, or this is a one-off thing? Because his Tinder hasn't changed since I met him on there. I am worried he's had Tinder on and off our whole relationship. Am I overreacting? Should I blow up our whole lives and marriage with a baby on the way? I haven't yet approached him about this because I don't know the best way to go about it. But I have screenshots and everything, and now that I'm back home, I've been distant, and he keeps asking what is wrong. Now, for some comments. One commenter suggested, "Girl, I would make a fake profile and match with him, then see what he's doing on there. Or have a friend do it. I think you already know what he's on there for, but if you want legit proof, go get it. I fear he will try to gaslight you and lie about what he's doing." I responded, "This is a really good idea. I don't know if I have the patience to wait that long. I do not have a good poker face or acting skills." Another commenter shared, "This is exactly what I did and how I caught my boyfriend cheating. He matched and messaged my fake profile in like 2.5 seconds flat. What a freaking idiot. Cheaters are low-life dummies that lack emotional intelligence. If he's cheating, it won't be hard to catch him, but definitely set the trap first so that he can't try and lie his way out of it." Someone else added, "Yes, because he'll swear he just forgot to take down his Tinder profile." Another commenter said, "This doesn't get better. So let's say you sit down and have a long talk with him. He actually comes clean and admits he still uses Tinder. Will you believe him if he says he's not met anyone off there? Or maybe just one person? Is that believable? Or would you still have doubts? I know. I'd not trust that I'd be able to get over this. I'd not believe what he told me after confronting him. And I'd not trust that I didn't have some horrible STI I need to worry about now passing to my child. He didn't care about you or his kiddo when he did this. I don't see how we'd recover." I replied, "Yes, I've had the same thoughts. Very shocked he's put our baby at risk like this. And chance ruining our family before it can even begin." And another commenter stated, "When somebody makes a Tinder account, they're not chancing ruining the family. They're actively doing it." I responded, "Facts." Now for the update 1 day later. I confronted my husband with the news that my friend found his Tinder profile. Many of you have wondered if it's the old account from 8 years that he just never deleted. To this, I know for a fact it is not. Reasons. 1. I went back through my old photos and found the screenshots I took of his profile 8 years ago, and it turns out it's not the exact same. Some photos are the same, particularly the first one, so it made me think it was the same profile. Also, the caption is slightly different, the difference of a single emoji. 2. The name changed to John. 3. The updated selections such as dream job, lifestyle selections, and interests. These all had selections with things that sound like him. These sections are new from when I used Tinder 8 years ago. 4. Above his name and age section on the first picture you come across while swiping Tinder, it says active. I have seen many of you comment and also read online that this means he has been using the account in some capacity recently, as in at least the last 2 weeks. Haven't been able to nail down an actual time frame. 5. People are also saying Tinder will not recommend profiles of people who are not using the app. They kind of just remove dormant users from the algorithm. 6. He is attractive enough to have someone want to use his photos, but reason 1 also rules out the catfishing theory. 2 of the photos are different from the 8 years ago profile, although still old, and I've seen them before, so this is why I believed it was the same. No one would have access to them. He doesn't have social media. I decided I would just talk to him, rather than put myself through the stress of trying to catch him on a date, if you like pina coladas. Style. Being pregnant, I'm really trying to stay calm and as low stress as possible for the health of my baby. Plus, trapping in relationships just isn't my style. In my mind, he's already caught. The reasons I listed above are enough proof for me. So as many of you, and I, predicted, he has resorted to gaslighting and lying. He vehemently denies that he has been using Tinder, meeting other women, or that he has had intimacy with anyone else, yet offers no explanation for the presence of this Tinder profile. He implores me to think logically about when he could do this, as he's home with me every night, which is true, but I had to remind him, I leave him home alone for at least a couple of days per month. He insists that he loves me and is excited for our baby, etc., but when I asked to see his phone, he refused, saying, I don't want to be that couple who looks through each other's phones. I told him, given this situation, if you won't let me check your phone, then I cannot trust or believe you and will have to assume the worst. In my mind, we had been very happy and content recently. Things have just felt good. This just goes to show you never really know a person. I believe there must be something deeply wrong with him or our relationship to want to cheat, especially at this happy time. I've moved into the guest bedroom for now while I plan my next move. Yes, I will be getting an STD check. Thank you all for the advice, support, and kind words. It's instilled a sense of confidence in me to handle this. Now, for some more comments. A commenter said, I commented on the last post, but this exact same thing happened to me. The only difference is that I was dumb enough to stay. I wanted to make it work for my children. It didn't. He pretended to be interested in therapy. He pretended to be faithful. All the while, he was still meeting randoms off of Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, you name it, for unprotected one-night stands. He would delete the apps before coming home and reinstall them in the morning when he got to work. My entire life felt like a lie, and I wasted too much time on him. I think you're a badass for not tolerating this behavior and for not allowing the lies and gaslighting to sway you. Another commenter added, my ex-husband attempted this as well. Samsung phones show recently downloaded apps in the store. The more you know. Then someone else remarked, I don't want to be that couple who has a cheater in it. And finally, another commenter predicted, up next. Honey, I realized I should have let you check to assuage your concerns. Here. Hands OP his phone after having scrubbed it. I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. My partner and I have been together for almost 5 years, and we've always had a great relationship. But recently, things have changed. My partner has been distant, and I feel like they're hiding something from me. I tried to talk to them about it, but they just brush it off and say everything is fine. I don't know what to do. I love them so much, but I can't shake this feeling that something is wrong. Now for a few important comments. One commenter suggested, maybe they're going through something personal and need time to process it. Another commenter said, have you considered couples therapy? It might help you both communicate better. Then the original poster replied, I hadn't thought about therapy. I'll suggest it and see what they think. Now for a few more comments. Someone else added, trust your instincts. If you feel something is off, it's worth exploring further. Finally, another commenter mentioned, sometimes people just need space. Give it a bit of time and see if things improve. Am I the idiot for feeling betrayed by my wife, for leaving after discovering I have a son from a previous relationship? My wife left me after I discovered I had a son from a previous relationship. I tried to post his age, but my post gets removed. So I just want to clear up that he was born 3 years before I married my wife, and there was absolutely no overlap or cheating in our relationship. This happened a month ago, and I requested a paternity test. Amy didn't say much while we waited for results, but agreed that if I was the father, I needed to be in my son's life in every way possible. 2 weeks ago, the results came back that I am the father, and immediately, Amy said she wanted a divorce and began packing her and our children's belongings. I was confused and asked her why, but she just cried and said she loved me. Amy and I have been married for 10 years. Our marriage has been pretty damn close to perfect. No serious arguments, same goals, we've traveled the world together, we have a beautiful home, rewarding careers, and fantastic children together. I am so heartbroken that she's thrown everything away. I feel like my life has been destroyed. I have no clue what to do. I have begged and pleaded for therapy, and my wife refuses. She has started the divorce process. The next issue is custody of our children and terms of divorce. All 4 of our children are young, not even in school yet. She says if I agree to give her primary custody, she will let me have the house and will not want child support, and will give me all of our savings so I can raise my son as his mother is struggling. She also agreed to pay for some home help for me. I am disabled and need help occasionally during flare-ups, which she usually provides. I told her I could afford it on my own, but she insists as she says she wants to help out since she won't be there. She will move across the country with our children, but said she will bring them for at least 2 weeks every 2 months so I can have a relationship with them and will pay for me to fly out to see them whenever I want. I don't know what to do. I have no family to discuss this with because 2 of mine and Amy's children are adopted, and my parents and extended family think my biological son is more important than them, which is obviously untrue. It makes me feel horrible, but I don't even know my son. It feels like I'm losing everything for a person I don't know. And I know he's a child, and I shouldn't feel that way. But all I ever wanted was my wife and kids. And while I will love my son and take care of him, I don't feel like he is my kid yet, just because I haven't really had time to get to know him. A month ago, I wouldn't have recognized him if I saw him on the street. I feel so much guilt for feeling this way. Amy and I both are fairly well off, but she is more so than me. She offered to hire me a lawyer of my choosing if I don't agree with her terms. I told her again I could afford it, but she says she just wants to make sure I get a fair deal. But I just can't. I don't want to divorce or lose my children. I love my wife and children more than anything. I just don't understand her motives or why she is doing this. It feels like I have to pick my son or my wife and our shared kids. I keep trying to make sense of it in my mind. She will not tell me any reason for wanting to get divorced. She is even being incredibly nice to my son. His birthday had recently passed, and she got him a new game system. They haven't met. She said say it was from myself and his siblings. She even told me what her nephew, same age as my son, is into so that I can get things my son might like. I don't even know what advice I'm looking for. It feels like my life has been completely ruined. I'm in therapy, but it doesn't seem to help. A month ago, my wife and I were planning on trying for another baby and picking our next vacation spot, and now I'm going to be divorced. How do I move on? How do I not unfairly resent my son when I know it's not his fault? I keep hoping there's a way to convince her to stay, but I don't even know what the problem really is. I'm hoping someone else has been through, learning they have a child after 10 plus years and knows where to start or what I can do to either move on or convince my wife that this doesn't have to happen. Any advice at all is appreciated, though. Now, for a few clarifications from the original poster. He has not asked his wife to be a caregiver to him. He rarely has flare-ups bad enough that he needs a caregiver, maybe once a month on a bad year, to a few times a year. And his wife was insistent our entire relationship on caring for him because she wanted to when he did need help. If she was burnt out or stressed, there was always an option to hire help. She was the one who did not want home help. They divided their workload equally in their household and had a nanny that assisted them with much of the housework, as well as regular cleaners, etc. As far as finances, while she earns more money than he does, they are both quite well off. They both work around the same amount of hours and contribute equally to household bills. He believes if his wife was unhappy, she would have said something. They have never had any issues in their relationship, and any problems that arose, she would communicate to him, and they would work together to solve. They always did check-ins in their relationship to make sure they were on the same page and could communicate in a healthy way. The more he hears stories from commenters, the more he believes she just did not want to be a step-parent. Second, while he has no way of proving that his wife was not cheating, he does not believe she was. They regularly used each other's phones, spent a majority of their time together, and she has never given him a reason to be suspicious. Another thing mentioned is that she is jealous because she is infertile. This is not the case. They were actually getting prepared to have another biological baby of their own before this happened. His wife has no plans to move immediately. Once they found out paternity, and she said she wanted a divorce, she wanted to be closer to her family. They are located across the country. He does not believe there is another man or anything else, as her family would not approve of dating or remarriage since they are quite religious. From his understanding, she has no solid plans as of yet, because she wants to make sure they have a custody agreement they are both happy with and both believe is fair. He is in contact with a lawyer now. He told his wife he did not find what she wanted to be fair in terms of custody, and they are now trying to figure out how they could have court-mandated 50-50 long distance with her paying the travel fees and associated costs. I've been downvoted many times for believing my wife, and I probably am an idiot. I've received many messages calling her names and saying what a bad person she is. I know I sound ridiculous, but I still feel the urge to defend her. I do not feel like she is trying to steal my children or punish me. She has never been that kind of person. She is the kind of person who keeps packages of supplies in her car for homeless people she sees. The type of person who spends her free time trapping feral cats to get them neutered and seen by a vet. She gives a large sum of her salary to charity and spends hours every week volunteering. She made sure the children we fostered saw their biological family more than state-mandated supervised visits, and used her own time and resources to make it happen. She is genuinely the best mother I know. She has gone out of her way to explain to our children that while we may not live together anymore, and I may have a new member in my family, I will always be involved in their life and love them very much. While it is hard for me to understand why she made this choice, it is also hard for me to believe she has become a person of malice. Many of your comments have said to ask for a trial separation and court-mandated therapy. I have mentioned those things, and she is still refusing. I plan on asking my lawyer about it and hoping we can move forward, if nothing else, as healthy co-parents. It is incredibly heartbreaking to see all of the comments saying that they would leave if they were in her position as well. Although I can understand your point of view, it is incredibly hard to live through it. I love my wife and children more than anything, and it is soul-wrenching to lose them to something that is also a surprise for me. I appreciate all of your advice and will keep you updated as best as I can, although I do not expect to be able to update for some time, as I do not expect this divorce to be finalized for some time. Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences with me, listening to me vent, and giving advice. Now for a few important comments. One commenter said, "Wow, so you traded your 4 children for a child from a previous relationship. You did, but everything is just peachy and no regrets? You didn't even attempt to have them stay in the state, because any decent attorney would have prevented that, or at least actually gotten you the 2 weeks every 2 months that your ex offered. It's appalling that you can't look ahead and see the damage you have and are continuing to do with your 4 children. Daddy chose the kid he loves, but no regrets. You threw away 4 of your children. How dare you? I'm not commenting much on your wife because this is your post, but she is just as awful." Then OP replied, "Now for the 1-year update. It has been over a year since my original post. Since then, my life has completely changed. Some days it is very hard, but all things considered, I am doing well. The biggest change is that my wife and I divorced. She moved with our shared children to the opposite coast to be near her family. We had an easy split, as we both agreed it was best for our family. I am very thankful for that. However, it is difficult not to see all of my kids. The first month was the hardest, especially as we did not want to divorce, and we had a hard time not treating each other like spouses, which delayed us healing. My son is doing much better now that it is just the 2 of us. After our divorce, my son opened up about her in therapy. I now understand much more about his behavior. He is much happier now as an only child as well. He is really thriving with my attention. He is still struggling with his mental health, but his care team sees progress, as do I. My other kids have seemingly forgotten my existence, which hurts, but is also better than them being sad about the situation. I constantly try and call them, but at their age, I get about 5 words in before they lose interest. My ex-wife and in-laws try and get them to stay on the phone and talk to me, but there is only so much connection you can have over the phone with kids their age. They seem happy, which is all I can ask for. I am at peace knowing that both my son and my younger kids have someone that loves them in their lives. I miss my family, but I feel I made the right choice for them and my son. After our divorce, I asked my ex-wife to lay it on the line. Why did she want to leave before even meeting my son? She had written me pretty consistent letters from the day we found out until the day we divorced. She gave them to me once our divorce was finished. I read over them several times. She gave several reasons for wanting to split. She felt she had chosen me to have a family with, and I had already had a family. If she had wanted strangers in her life, she would have married a man with kids the first time. She specifically chose someone without kids and felt she made a mistake, as now other people would have some control over our lives, and a stranger would be in our home. She loved our life, marriage, and knew it was all about to change because of my past decisions. She also said she knew that kids coming out of situations like his were likely to have trauma. She underlined many times that while I was a good person, she knew I'd throw our family under the bus to make up for something I had no control over. I wrote to her to tell her she was right and that I was sorry things turned out how they did. Overall, I am happy. I don't regret my decisions. My son is thriving with me, and my other kids have a great mother and maternal family. I hope my son continues to improve, and I selfishly hope that as time passes and he gets older and more stable, I will be able to reconnect with my wife and be involved with my other kids. I appreciate everyone who reached out with advice. I did not expect this much hate. We did not really have much choice. My son has some severe issues, and he could no longer live in the same household as my younger children without their safety being at risk. We did the best we could, and my wife needed support. Her family has been great. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "You could have gone with them, lived in a close neighborhood. Your son is literally using all his guns against them because he still has his friends near him. If you at least had tried harder, she would have a huge support to also ask your kid to behave. Removing his cell phone and notebook isn't working. He is known to glorify that they left and you are happy. Your child spread corn dude, and just a tap in his head and never seeing your kids will never fix him. Your choices are a mistake. You need to change his environment. He is a thug. You are raising an assaulter. The original poster responded, "My son hated my other children and was attracted to my wife to the point he fantasized about strangling her when he saw us talk or hug. Another kid he befriended in our neighborhood told his parents that my son wanted to find a gun and shoot my 4-year-old because he took a Lego from his set. He made finger guns at them one time, and when our nanny said not to do that, he replied, 'Why? Do you think it would take them a long time to die?' Living near them was not an option." Another commenter added, "Your children with your wife still need you. You have abandoned them, and they are protecting themselves. It's good you are trying so hard with your son, but don't think for a moment your kids don't think about you. Make sure the narrative is positive so they still feel special in your life." The original poster replied, "Thank you. I write letters to my kids frequently and store them so they will have them as they get older, since they aren't much interested in talking now. It sounds silly, but I write things that make me think of them, what I am excited for in their lives, moments that my in-laws or ex-wife tell me that make me proud of them, and I send gifts to them frequently with letters or cards that my ex reads to them."